Have you ever given your whole heart to someone only to realize that they never truly saw you? Have you ever poured out your love, your patience, your loyalty, only to be met with silence, neglect, or worse, indifference? I want to talk to you today about something heavy, something sacred. I want to speak to those who have stayed far too long in the shadows of someone else's comfort, someone else's convenience. And I urge you, don't turn away. Don't click away. Because what you're about to hear might just be the message your soul has been waiting for. You see, love is one of the most powerful forces God ever gave to mankind. But when love is not returned, when love is used, or worse, taken for granted, it becomes a prison to the soul. There are some of you listening who have lost your voice in someone else's world. You've cried silent tears. You've prayed for change. You've lowered your standards. You've accepted less because you hoped one day he would wake up and see you. But let me tell you something in truth. Sometimes the most spiritual, most powerful, and most healing decision you can make is to walk away. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in wisdom, in strength, in quiet reverence for the person God made you to be. Because the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop begging to be noticed, is the moment you give God permission to restore what was broken in you. It's the moment you let Him feel the pain of losing someone who was always there. Some people will never know your worth until you're gone. Some men only wake up when the silence grows louder than your words ever did. And while you were always there, loving, forgiving, sacrificing, they never imagined a day would come when you wouldn't be. But that day must come, not out of revenge, but out of reverence for your soul, for your calling, for your peace. Letting go doesn't make you weak. It proves that you trust God more than you trust your own emotions. It shows that you believe in a love that is mutual, not manipulative. And when you remove yourself from a space where you were not honored, you create the opportunity for them to reflect. Sometimes your absence will become their greatest teacher. I'm not here to preach hate. I'm here to preach healing. I'm not telling you to destroy. I'm telling you to rebuild. Rebuild your dignity. Rebuild your faith. Rebuild your heart. Because the one who truly values you will never let you question your place. The one who is meant for you will fight to keep you, not force you to suffer in silence. So tonight, if you hear me, hear this clearly. You do not need to stay in a place where your value is invisible. You do not have to keep proving your worth to someone who never chose to cherish it. Let him feel the loss. Let him sit with the silence. Let him face what life looks like without the light you brought into his world. And when you walk away, walk in grace. Walk in dignity. Walk with your head held high, knowing that the same God who gave you love also gave you the strength to let go. And on the other side of that pain is peace, is power, is purpose. Let him feel the pain of losing you, not because you wanted to cause harm, but because you finally realized your worth. And once you know your worth, you never settle again. You were never created to beg for love. You were never meant to shrink yourself just to be noticed, nor to dim your light so someone else could shine without being threatened. One of the most dangerous things a woman can do is trade her self-worth for attachment. You begin to accept less than what you deserve because you fear the loneliness that comes with walking away. You confuse comfort with love. You start to believe that if you love harder, give more, or stay silent through the pain, things will change. But they don't, and your soul grows tired. Your smile becomes forced. Your joy fades slowly behind closed doors. And the worst part, you begin to doubt yourself. You start to wonder, maybe this is all I deserve. Maybe this is as good as it gets. But let me remind you of something holy and true. Your value was written by the hand of God. No man defines it. No rejection erases it. No silence can silence it. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase what is not for her. She doesn't settle where there is no peace. She doesn't confuse attention for affection. She knows that her presence is a gift. And when someone cannot see that, it is not her job to prove it. It is her job to protect it. You see, when your identity is tied to someone else's ability to appreciate you, you become a slave to their approval. But when your identity is rooted in God, you know that even if someone walks away, you are still whole. You are still loved. You are still chosen. That is why God sometimes allows the rejection, so you can be redirected back to Him. So He can remind you, daughter, you don't have to fight for a place where you were never meant to stay. You don't have to bleed to be seen. The longer you stay in a place where you're tolerated instead of treasured, the more you begin to disconnect from who you truly are. But when you step away, when you say enough is enough, that is the moment heaven begins to fight for you. That is when God starts to open doors you were too distracted to notice before. And that is when the man who didn't value you begins to feel the weight of your absence. There is a quiet kind of strength that this world rarely applauds, but heaven surely honors, the strength of walking away. It's the strength of the woman who has cried all her tears, prayed all her prayers, and finally realizes that staying is no longer an act of love, but of survival. People may call it cold, they may call it selfish, but let me tell you today, it is courage. It takes far more strength to walk away from what's breaking you than to stay and pretend it's building you. The world teaches women to endure everything for the sake of love, to wear their pain as proof of loyalty, to tolerate disrespect in hopes that one day it might transform into appreciation. But that is not God's plan. That is not what real love demands. God never called you to be abused emotionally, neglected spiritually, or dismissed consistently just to prove your faithfulness. There's a difference between commitment and captivity. The woman who walks away isn't running, she's rising. She's not giving up, she's giving herself a chance to breathe again. Walking away doesn't mean your love wasn't real. It doesn't mean your heart wasn't sincere. It means you've finally come to the place where you realize that love should not cost you your dignity, your peace, or your purpose. And when you take that step, when you turn from what once made you feel small, you begin to see just how powerful you really are. You feel heaven lifting you again. You feel the breath of God filling places that were once empty. And yes, it may hurt. Yes, you may feel the weight of that goodbye. But you will also feel something else. Freedom. Freedom from the cycle of trying to convince someone to love you right. Freedom from the fear that if you leave, you'll lose everything. Because the truth is, by staying, you are losing yourself. And when you walk away, you allow the other person to face what they've lost. Not through your words, but through your absence. You give them the space to feel what they refuse to see. And in that space, God begins to heal you. He begins to build you. And He begins to bless you. There is a burden many women carry that was never theirs to hold. The burden of His regret. You stay up late at night, wondering if you could have done more, been more, loved harder, forgiven longer. You replay conversations in your head, analyzing every word, every silence, trying to find out where it all went wrong. But let me tell you something today, with all the truth and compassion I have, His regret is not your burden. If a man could not see the worth in you when you were loving him, showing up for him, giving him grace, then it is not your job to carry the sorrow of what he lost. That weight belongs to him and him alone. Some of you are walking around trying to heal a man's guilt by staying broken yourself. You're still holding on to a love that God has already released you from. You're still giving your energy to someone who left your heart on the shelf. But you must hear this. You were not called to carry what he was too blind to cherish. Let him feel the consequences of his choices. Let him sit with the silence that follows your goodbye. That is not cruelty, it is clarity. Because the man who lets a good woman go, the man who ignores your tears and takes your heart for granted, will one day wake up to the emptiness he created. He will look around and realize that the constant love he once took lightly is no longer within reach. And that realization, that regret, will not come when you're still begging to be loved. It will come when you've already moved on. When your laughter returns. When your peace is restored. When your spirit is no longer heavy with trying to be enough. And when it does, let it come. Let it come without guilt, without resentment, without you feeling responsible to fix what he broke. Because healing does not mean going back. Forgiveness does not mean returning to pain. You are not his lesson to relearn. You are God's daughter to protect, and the regret he feels, that's between him and God. Don't wear it, don't carry it, just walk in freedom and let him carry what he lost. Pain has a voice, it speaks when everything else goes silent. And sometimes the only way a man will ever understand your worth is through the echo of your absence. You tried talking, you tried patience, you tried love, but nothing changed. And so God in his wisdom will allow pain to do the teaching that your presence could not. Because some people do not appreciate what they have until it's no longer theirs. They do not value the light you brought into their life until they're left sitting in the darkness they created. You see, pain is not always punishment. Sometimes it's instruction. It opens eyes that pride kept shut. It humbles a heart that thought it could always have you without earning you. And while you were once the one feeling all the pain, crying, doubting, praying, there comes a moment when God flips the script. The one who ignored you begins to feel what you once felt. The one who was numb to your love begins to suffer in your silence. And that pain becomes a mirror, a reflection of how deeply your love mattered. The beauty is you don't have to say a word. You don't have to argue. You don't have to just like a student sitting alone in a quiet classroom, he will begin to remember the moments he dismissed, the kindness he overlooked, the loyalty he never earned. Pain in that moment becomes his instructor, and while it teaches him what he lost, it teaches you what you deserve. It teaches you that your value is not proven by how long you stay, but by what happens when you leave. Your love was not weak. Your efforts were not wasted. But your absence had to become the lesson, because your presence was not appreciated. And the longer you try to rescue someone from feeling the pain of their choices, the longer you delay their growth. You must allow the pain to teach them. You must trust God enough to step back, because only when you let go can they begin to feel what they could not see before. And in that pain he will finally learn, you were never just someone to have. You were a blessing to honor. There is something sacred about distance. It is in the space between what was and what will be that God does his deepest work. Some of you have been trying to heal in the same place that broke you. You keep showing up hoping for change, hoping for recognition, hoping that if you just hold on a little longer, love will finally look the way it was meant to. But hear me, dear soul, healing rarely happens in the presence of what wounded you. Sometimes you've got to walk away not just to be free, but to be healed. You see, when you stay too close to someone who constantly minimizes your value, you begin to believe their version of you. Their coldness becomes your confusion. Their silence becomes your shame. And the longer you stay, the more you lose sight of your reflection. But when you step back, when you choose distance over dysfunction, something begins to shift. God begins to restore what they tried to erase. He begins to speak where their silence left a void. That's why walking away isn't about pride, it's about protection. It's about giving your heart enough space to hear God again, to feel peace again, to remember who you are without the pain trying to define you. Distance gives you perspective. It clears the fog of emotional chaos and lets you see the truth. You were never
asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. And when the noise of that relationship fades, you can finally hear heaven. You can hear God remind you that your love is not a weakness but a strength. That your tenderness is not a flaw but a gift. That you don't have to compete for what is divinely yours. In the silence of distance, he begins to rebuild you. Not into someone harder or colder, but into someone wiser, stronger, more grounded in truth. And while he may start to feel the sting of your absence, you begin to feel the power of your healing. The chains that held you so tightly start to fall. And in that sacred space, you realize you never needed someone to complete you. You needed the courage to return to yourself. And that courage, that healing, comes through the holy gift of distance. Sometimes what feels like heartbreak is really heaven's protection. Sometimes the separation you didn't want is the salvation you didn't know you needed. When someone walks away, or when you're forced to let go, it may seem like rejection, but in truth, it may be God's redirection. You see, we often cling to people who cannot carry the weight of our calling. We tie our hearts to those who don't have the strength or the willingness to love us the way God intended. And in his mercy, God will allow separation not to hurt you, but to shield you, because he sees what you cannot. He hears the conversations you never will. He knows the future that you are being prepared for. And he knows that not everyone is meant to walk with you into it. That is why some doors close. That is why some people drift away. Not because you weren't enough, but because their presence was becoming a barrier to your breakthrough. It may not feel like protection at first. It may feel like loss, like abandonment, like failure. But with time and with God, you will begin to see clearly. You will see that your tears were watering the soil of your next season, that your loneliness was preparing your spirit for greater intimacy with Him, and that your silence was not emptiness, but the stillness required for God to speak. He cannot bless what you refuse to release, and so He sometimes allows a heart to break so that He can heal it with truth, so that He can rebuild you, reshape you, restore you, not as someone desperate to be chosen by man, but as someone who is already chosen by God. Separation is not always the enemy. In fact, it can be the greatest evidence that heaven is involved in your life. Because when God calls you higher, He will not let you stay tied to what keeps you small. He will not let you stay bound to what makes you doubt your worth. He loves you too much to let you settle. And so He separates you not to punish, but to protect. Not to destroy, but to develop. He moves what needs to be moved so that nothing will block the blessing He has planned for you. And that is divine love. That is divine mercy. That is divine protection. My dear sister, you have cried long enough. You have waited, hoped, and hurt in silence for far too many nights. But God is saying no more. No more settling for less than what He ordained. No more shrinking to be loved. No more carrying the weight of someone else's blindness. This was never just about a relationship. It was about your identity. It was about you learning to see yourself the way heaven sees you, cherished, chosen, and crowned with dignity. Letting go does not mean you lost it. Means you trusted. It means you believe that what God has for you will never require you to beg, break, or bleed to keep it. You are not walking away to prove a point. You are walking away to protect your peace. And in doing so, you will not only heal, but you will rise. And when He feels your absence, when He begins to taste the silence He once served you, it won't be because you wished Him pain. It will be because God finally gave him a glimpse of what he so easily took for granted. And as for you, God is not finished. He is just getting started. He is preparing people who will value your spirit, protect your heart, and honor your presence. He is restoring the woman who forgot her power. He is breathing fresh fire into your purpose. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not forsaken. You are being set apart. So walk away not in bitterness, but in boldness. Let your silence speak. Let your peace preach. Let Him feel the pain of losing you. Not because you want revenge, but because your value can no longer be denied. And let heaven lead you into a life so full of purpose, peace, and joy, that the pain that once tried to define you becomes nothing more than a testimony to God's grace. Now go. Hold your head high. Love yourself enough to leave the door closed. And trust the one who never leaves nor forsakes you, Jesus Christ. For in Him you are whole, in Him you are seen, and in Him you are truly free.